Hello and welcome. My name is Waldo and this is a 5.9 liter 24 valve Cummins. In this video I'll be finishing up some work on it so it'll be ready to test fit into my project truck GMC C3500HD. Just a quick word before I get to work. At the time I'm publishing this video, the channel just reached 500 subscribers. In fact, the channel probably doubled in size over the last week due to the popularity of a couple of my early videos of trying to start dyno. If you're a new subscriber to the channel, welcome and thank you so much for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is your chance to get in before we hit 1,000 subscribers. Once again, thank you so much. Now let's get to work. While I have this engine on a stand, I'm going to do some more work to it. I have to replace the vacuum pump and the thermostat. I also have to fabricate a custom bracket to fit a 200 amp GM alternator, which will allow the tachometer to work on the GMC. Lastly, I'm going to paint the engine so it won't look so ugly. This engine uses vacuum to operate the cruise control and the exhaust brake, neither of which worked on the Dodge that this engine came out of. So I'm replacing the vacuum pump to ensure that those work. Alright, removing the vacuum pump should be really simple. It has two bolts, one on the top and one on the bottom, bolting it to the timing gear housing. And then there's another bolt over here bolting it to the block. And then it should just slide right out along with the power steering pump. And don't forget to remove the oil supply line. There are a total of 4 studs holding the power steering pump to the vacuum pump. I already removed one of them, so I just got to remove 3 more nuts. And the power steering pump goes back onto the new vacuum pump just like it came off. You want to make sure you line these up with the female end in here. What I did is I've gone ahead and lined this up with this bolt hole, and I've done the same with this bolt hole on the vacuum pump, and that way hopefully it'll just go together easily. Before I reinstall the vacuum pump, I'm just going to throw a quick coat of paint on because it's going to be a lot harder to get to it once I install the pump. I'm not going to put this back right away because I want to get rid of some of this rust here and then paint it off of the engine, because it's kind of an awkward shape and it's so badly rusted that I want to make sure that I get a good coat of paint on here so this doesn't rust anymore. Alright, so I have the GM alternator here, and I purchased this weld-on alternator bracket that works with GM alternators. So this will go like this, and I'm thinking probably have it mounted approximately here, maybe a little higher than this. I'm going to have this somewhere around here, and I think what I'll do is I'll make a plate to go on here, and then I'll probably have it positioned somewhere around here. So I'll have a little bit of fabricating to do. Alright, so here I have the GM alternator, and this is the pulley that came with it. Now this is a 6-rib pulley. The pulley that came off of the Dodge is an 8-rib pulley. That's what the Cummins uses. So, but as it turns out, this fits perfectly onto the GM alternator. So I think I'm just going to use this 8-rib pulley as is. Now the diameter is a little bit too big, so it's actually going to cause the tachometer signal to be off by just a little bit. I can actually calculate exactly how far off it's going to be, but for now I think this is going to work. And then I can always either get this turned down, or I could get a different pulley made that's the correct size. Alright, so I've gone ahead and I've done a bit of fabric cobbling, and I have this right here, which is going to be the upper alternator mount. So this plate right here is going to bolt to the thermostat housing on the engine, and then this piece right here is where the upper part of the alternator attaches to. And I've gone ahead and taken just a piece of metal here, which is going to use as filler sort of to get this mount away from this plate for clearance. And so I basically just have to weld this up. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to weld these two things together. And then I'm going to go bring it out to the engine itself and with the alternator, and I'm going to figure out exactly where this goes on this plate. It is really important that you get your alternator pulley lined up properly with your other pulleys so that your serpentine belt is straight and it won't break on you. As for welding this onto this, I'm going to go do a fillet weld here, I'm going to do a fillet weld here, and then on the other side here I've drilled this hole here so that I can go ahead and attach it here as well. Alright, so I've got these clamps together, so I'm just going to go ahead and weld these up. So I guess I should mention I'm using the Miller Multimatic 220 AC/DC today, and I'm going to be TIG welding. Alright, now that I have this tacked up, I don't need this clamp anymore. Alright, and with that done, once this thing cools off, I can go bring this outside to the engine and figure out exactly where it's going to fit on this plate, clamp it together, and then I'll bring it back inside and weld it up. Alright, so I'm going to mount it right about like this. Honestly, it looks like it's about a 1/4 inch from the edge of this. You could probably just measure it and it's close enough as long as it's square, but Do that. Alright, so I have this thing clamped in place where I think it should be. Before I fully weld it, I'm just going to tack it on each side so that I can bring it outside, just mount it up to the engine, do a quick sanity check, make sure everything is good, and then after that I'll fully weld it. And there's the finished result. We got a tack there and we got a tack there. So let's go. I'm gonna go mount this up, and hopefully I'll be back and I'll fully weld it. All right. Well, it's a good thing I went outside to check because I actually ended up making a little change to it, but it looks pretty good now. So let's weld this thing up. Alright, so I have this bracket fully welded onto the plate, and now what I've done is I actually went ahead and fabric hulled some gussets out of 1/4" steel plate, and I'm going to weld these on here, here and here, and this is just going to help prevent any potential warping from going on here. This is 1/4" thick plate down here as well, so I think the warping will be minimal, but this will help make it sturdy.
The next day.
So I'm going to try getting the exhaust manifold off because I would like to paint it separately with some high heat paint. If I can't get it off, it's not a big deal. I really don't want to chance breaking any of these bolts, but if it does come off, then that's great. It'll make my life easier. Yeah, this bolt came off pretty easily. Excellent. Alright, so the exhaust manifold is ready for paint. I'm going to start out by using a Rust-Oleum high heat primer, and it says it resists heat up to 2,000 degrees, so if that's correct, this should work for this exhaust manifold. And then I'm going to follow that up with the Rust-Oleum high heat flat black paint. And it says to wait at least 1 hour before painting. Alright, so I just finished doing the prep work on this engine. It took me 3 days, but I sanded it down, got rid of the loose rust, got rid of all the caked on grease and oil, wiped it down with acetone, so it should be ready to paint. So you've already seen me paint part of it, but I'm going to be using this Duplicolor engine enamel in red. And it's just a quick rattle can job, but hopefully it'll adhere well because I have put so much effort into prep. So here we go. So I put on 2 more coats of paint and then I let it dry overnight, and this is the end result. And I even put a little bit of white paint on here. I didn't want to highlight the Dodge part, but the Cummins 24 valve turbo diesel. So now it's time to start putting this thing back together. I also painted these other parts off the engine. Alright, so I'm installing new exhaust manifold gaskets, and I'm also going to be using anti-seize on the threads of these bolts. As with many things, there is a specific tightening sequence for these exhaust manifold bolts, and they get torqued down to 32 foot-pounds. Here's the upper alternator bracket that I created. It's all painted. Now, I haven't yet created a lower bracket for the alternator, but what I'm going to end up doing, it'll probably be pretty simple. I think I'm just going to take a piece of flat bar and run it from this hole here to this hole here. They're not completely flush, so I will need to do a spacer or maybe just some washers or something on this one so that they're flush. And then, yeah, it'll be as simple as that. Just drill 2 holes in the flat bar, throw some bolts in, and it should be sturdy. If it's not, I could do a second one on the back as well, but we'll see if that's necessary. Alright, next up it's time to install the new thermostat. I left the old one in just to keep the paint out of this hole, but I'll just take that out. Well, I'm pretty happy with how this paint job turned out. I'm also really glad that I removed the exhaust manifold, because the paint job ended up way better as a result. Up next, I'm going to be mating the Eaton Fuller transmission to the Cummins, and then I'm going to be test fitting the engine and the transmission to the GMC so that I can fabricable up some motor and transmission mounts. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, let me know down below. Thank you for watching.